This is part 4 of the typographic portrait tutorial. In this part we'll be painting with words and repeating and repeating. This is the same as part 3 except that you have seen it once with the white section, and so for the gray and the black I'm going to go a little bit faster. So let's begin. So the first thing is we're going to turn on our posterized layer and click on that layer. Then we'll go to select color range. This time we're going to click on something gray. Notice it's not a lot of your picture, at least in mine it isn't, so probably not going to be able to fit any full words in those spaces right there, but that's okay. So now we have a gray selection. We're going to select our brush tool. Make sure that your color is set to gray. If it's not, click here and change it to gray. And then we're going to make a new layer, and we're going to rename this layer Gray Text. Now we can turn our posterized layer off. Make sure you're on the gray text layer. Select a word brush. And begin painting. Even though you're not going to be able to see much of these words, you're only going to see a letter here and a letter there, at least if your portrait looks a little like mine. We still have to make sure and fill in all the selected areas so that you have that gray tone in your picture. Now I'm not going to make you watch me paint all of my words in, so I'm going to pause and come back once I have all of the gray area filled in. Alright, and now once you have all of your gray text filled in, the next step is to make another new layer. We're going to rename this one Gray Pattern. We're going to move it below gray text. Make sure Gray Pattern is still selected. Go up to Edit, Fill. Make sure your pattern is selected and say OK. Once again, it filled it with black, but we're going to fix that. Control D to deselect the overall gray area. Click on the gray pattern layer, and then Control click on the layer thumbnail to select just that pattern text. Control click. And then we can go to Edit, Fill, and we're going to fill it with the foreground color, which happens to be gray. Now Control D to deselect that selection. Click on your gray text layer, and now we're going to select the gray text. Control click. And now we're going to make that border so the letters stand out a little bit more. So go to Select, Modify, Expand, set it to 2 pixels, and say OK. Now click back on your gray pattern layer, and down at the bottom to add a layer mask. Remember that it added an inverted layer mask. It's mostly black, we want it mostly white. So you can press Control I to invert that. And now you should see some definition between your gray text and your gray pattern if you zoom in pretty close. I'm not sure if I'm going to see it because, like I said, there's not a whole lot of gray in the picture. Now let's repeat for the black. So turn your posterized layer on. Go to Select, Color Range. Click on something black. Oops. Make sure you're on that layer before you do that. So be on your posterized layer. Select Color Range. Click on something black. There's a lot of my picture is black. Say OK. So now we have a black selection. Make a new layer. Call it Black Text. Now we can turn our posterized layer off. Our color is set to black. Choose a brush. Here's where it's going to be pretty important to start with really big words, because if yours is anything like mine, I've got a lot of black space to fill, and it's going to feel like a pretty overwhelming task at first because it's a lot of space, and I don't want it to be repetitive. So start with big words, and then just keep making your words smaller. Or you could start with the pattern instead of the words, and then you'll know which spaces you need to fill with the text. Okay, so I paused and filled in some of that black text. Now I'm going to add another new layer. I'm going to call this one black pattern. Move it below black text. The black section is still selected, so I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, change it back to Pattern, make sure it's the right pattern selected, say OK. Then to add that depth, we are going to deselect, Control D, click back on your black text layer, Control click to select the words that you hand painted. Go to Select, Modify, Expand by 2 pixels. Say OK. So that selection got a little bit bigger. Click back on your black pattern layer and add a layer mask, which we need to invert with a Control I on the keyboard. And there you have it for the most part. Hopefully you can see your image stand out. If not, there's a couple other things that we can do to make it stand out, but at this point, depending on your picture, it might look great. If you want to do some of the extra stuff, look for a video that's going to come up next.